Today on the Cameron Journal podcast, we are joined by Matt Drago. I should have asked him how to pronounce that before we did this, because I probably butchered it, but that's okay. He is in a new film called Somewhere in Montana, opposite Graham McTavish from Outlander. So, ladies, catch this one. And Michelle Hurd from Picard Blind Spot in the Glades. I will watch the trailer a few times and showed it to friends in preparation for this because some people kind of like, doesn't he sound familiar? I'm like, he's been in some things. The IMDb list is long. But I think he's sort of one of those white guys that's in movies, but you don't necessarily recognize on the street sort of thing. There was a documentary about that several years ago. And and everyone enjoyed it and thought it was very interesting. And it's kind of, Yellowstone meets Hollywood. And I imagine the plot of this movie has occurred somewhere in Utah or Montana, shooting all those shows out west. So, we're going to talk about the film today and the making of it and all this sort of thing. So, welcome, Matt, to the Cameron Journal podcast.
Thank you, Cameron, for having me. This is going to be great. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Good, you're very welcome. So, why don't we begin from the beginning? Why don't you tell us a little about the movie?
Absolutely. So it's a story of the times, and I definitely think it's a story that we all need to hear right now. I play Fabian Verdugo. He's a West Coast director, and he's thrust in a difficult situation where he needs a location for his film. And again, I always say this. I mean, it's definitely a legacy piece for him. So the film has to be perfect. And so his producer, Kat, played by my friend Michelle Hurd, finds this wonderful ranch that happens to be John Alexander, played by Graham McTavish's ranch. And unbeknownst to me at this point, in the story, John is running into some financial issues, and he needs the money from the film in order to be able to continue on his legacy, which is his ranch. And so it really just becomes this, really wonderful, rich script that Brandon Smith wrote and directed about two people that just really wouldn't normally or ever be in the same place at the same time together, but we need each other. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the heartbeat of the film is that we are two vastly different people, but we are thrust in a situation that we have to get ourselves out of. And it really does. It takes a lot of trial and tribulations. We really honed into telling it as authentically as we Graham and I actually have a 10-page scene that's just the two of us. And it's a conversation starter. It goes into all of the elements that I'm sure we'll get into on your show today. Politics, social issues, religion, gender, and all of these things that, we're just trying to have conversations about, but also really just kind of coming in alignment with each other because I think we need stories like this right now, especially where we're at as a country, where it's just automatically divisive. Like we are just at each other's throats in a way that I've never seen while I've been here on this planet. And as an actor, as an artist, and a collaborator, I think we, as a team, just realized that this was a story that was bigger than all of us because it shows you that once you let people in, there is a path forward. And yes, you do not have to agree with everything, and you frankly never will, and that's okay. And I think what was so wonderful about this film specifically is because we are so different, Graham and me, in terms of our energies and in how we play these two parts, that it really does. You can feel the dissonance and the just emotional tone to it of a coming together piece. And I always say this about great art. It's like when you see something, not just hear about it, which is where we're getting a lot of our information, but you see, just the emotional heartbeat of two different worlds colliding and working through that and finding common ground, then you realize that there's more that connects us than can ever divide us. And this is a film of the times, and it really does speak to that. So I'm really proud of the film, and it's in theaters now, limited run. It will branch out to more theaters in the next few weeks, and I will post that on my social media at Matt Drago, Mattdrago, if you want to give a follow there. But it will eventually go to VOD and streaming as well. And I'm just grateful because I think it's a really important conversation piece and something that we all need to hear right now.
Yes, I mean, obviously, there's no there's no love lost between Hollywood and a large cross section of the country, especially with a lot of the stuff that has happened. There's been many a controversy as of late with race swapping characters and oh, we're pushing this agenda, that agenda, all this type of thing. And people seem to be craving the nice, normal, safe, calm stuff that they are used to. Um, how, as someone who's in the industry, how are you experiencing that dynamic these days?
Just in terms of people on set, or
Yeah, or just even your own sort of view of the crisis on social media about every little thing from oh the Little Mermaid's black, how terrible, to as someone who's part of the industry, does it bother you? Do you not care? Do you think Hollywood should reach out more to the middle of the country, i.e. the average Trump voter, you know or all the above?
yeah, I mean that's a great question, Cameron, and a lot to unpack. I think I would say all the above. I mean, I think that good art speaks to a coming together. I think it speaks to where we are as a society, and yeah, I mean there are a lot of people, frankly, that just are I mean I hate to say against a progressive agenda. But I mean, what makes America great, really? I mean, if we're really talking about it, or wonderful, or any of the other words that you can say,
Right.
not necessarily great, is the fact that this is an experiment, right? And we are from different countries and we do have different backgrounds. And when we can align as, part of something bigger than ourselves, I think that, there is a path forward to our society and frankly our world, because there's a lot at stake right now. And so I do think that there are people that freely just demonstrate hateful ideals, whether it is like the examples that you're talking about. And frankly, that is something that I am firmly against, because we need to advocate for all people, and we need to advocate for all people's stories, and we need to honor them. And I think that this film, and this is a breakaway, but it really aligns with kind of what you're talking about, is that the people that have come to see this film, whether they've been on the left or the right or somewhere in between, have all really gleaned the same thing. We've gotten a lot of feedback from a mix of people, because I think what we're trying to do is un-Hollywood in many ways. We are trying to demonstrate the just conversation in the truest, purest, most authentic, organic way that we can, almost like we're having a conversation right now on your show. It's that it is a conversation piece. It's something that needs to be had, and it needs to be had amongst each other in the same space, not through social media, not through one line here or there, not with canceling each other for one thing that we might say that might be taken the wrong way. We have to get back to the place where we really can lean into our hearts a little bit more, and not our minds, and creating this just dissonance that I think doesn't exist as much as we give it power to. And I think that's kind of where this film specifically is something that I've always wanted to do as an actor, because I am more progressive, and a lot of the people that I have developed my character through are people that have inspired me and that are my friends, and a lot of my backstory in living in New York City, and being around musical theater. And I just think that the way that Brandon wrote and developed this story was really trying to be as I mean, I hate to say the word bipartisan, because I don't think it's just political. It's just really breaking down that wall of figuring out how to start to have a meaningful conversation where you can walk away and you won't agree with everything, but you can start to find what I consider the highest form of love, which is mutual respect for one another. And when you respect somebody, then I believe that there's more that can connect us than could ever divide us, but we have to figure out a way forward. And I think this film does a wonderful job of doing that.
Yeah. No, that's very good. How did you find this character? Who did how did you tease out who this guy should be?
Well, how I found the character was a great story. I was working in a steak restaurant, and my friend Zuzu Weingart and her husband Kyle are both in the industry, and she didn't have an agent, and I've always just kind of been a pay it forward kind of guy. I got her in with my agent, and in 2019, she moved back to Montana. She's got her own production company, 99 Productions. She's got a film out as well that just came out with my friend Kevin Jack, who's the lead of it, Cuisine de l'Apocalypse. I'm a little bit part in that, and she called me up a couple years ago, and it was just kind of that. Full circle moment, that artist looking out for other artists sort of thing. And it really resonated with me. And she called me up and she said, "Hey, my friend Brandon has this script. And every time I read one of the lead characters, I see your face." And it was just this moment of humility for me, and obviously deep curiosity, because if she was looking out for me, like, I had to figure out a way to put myself on tape. So I did. And I actually went down to my acting teacher in Sherman Oaks. We ran the scene a bunch, but we only put it on tape one time. And it was just this interesting thing where at the end of that, he, looked at me and he was just like, and I was like, "What does that mean?" He said, "I wouldn't tell you to change a thing. You have a really clear take on this character." Unbeknownst to him, I read the script 3 times before I even put myself on tape. And it was just one of those stories that, again, had a gravitational pull to me. I do feel like, roles that are meant for you will always find you. I've always tried to channel that in my life and in my practice, because you don't have all the control in the world as an actor. You can want something, but sometimes just being curious is, and enjoying the process of auditioning, which is your opportunity to act, is big. So, I put that out there. I let it go. A few weeks passed, and I got a producer session with Eden Matson, the producer, and Brandon Smith, the writer director, and Jared Brocksterman, the local casting director. And again, a lot of the conversation I remember in that producer session, Cameron, was just a conversation about the story. I was just so taken by it, and I was so taken by it because I think I understood its relevance and its importance. And a lot of this character, frankly, aligns with who I am. And so I, just really was asking a lot of questions and just very curious about everything about the project. And, it was a great productive producer session. And then I let it go. Again, that's the hardest part about being an actor, is you got to let it go. You have to do your work, and then you have to let it go. And a few weeks again passed by, and Jared called me up and, said that I'd gotten granted the role. And it was just this incredible gift in my life. And I remember hanging up the phone and I said, "Okay, Matt, it's time to get to work." Because again, I think getting the role is one thing, but earning it is another. And I felt like I really needed to earn it. So I spent the last, it was actually 2 years, because the movie got pushed back a year. And I suffered a major personal loss. My stepfather, who was a real father figure, or my best friend, passed away actually 3 days before we were supposed to start shooting the first time. And when it got pushed back a year, it gave me a time to kind of process all that, because I was a wreck. And I think getting pushed back a year was really a gift for me. And I actually was able to pay honor to him in the ways that I could as an artist and an actor, because of how much I loved him. And his love was food, and I really think it rubbed off on me for my love of acting. And so, I gave a lot of the just homage to Papa Chaz through my character, and through my ability to create this character and tell a great story. And so it really is. It's just kind of one of those, gifts that keeps on giving. I think that the relationships that I made on set are something that will last a lifetime. And yeah, it's just, the journey continues, but I'm really excited for people to see it.
Yeah, did y'all shoot on location?
We did. We shot all of it in Polson, Montana, which is gorgeous. It's right at the base of Flathead Lake. It's about an hour, hour and a half away from Glacier National Park. And got to be honest, like as an artist, like there's no better place than to shoot overlooking like, the majesty. I mean, Jonathan Stoddard, my friend, calls it God's wallpaper. I think that's perfectly put. It's just a really great place to have an insightful, meaningful film told. And again, a lot of the relationships that we built off screen. We would go on hikes together. We would eat our meals together. I mean, Graham and I, Michelle and I, we would just spend so much time like having these really wonderful conversations. And when you think about what pros they are, it's because of how much space they allow for actors to be a part of that collaborative process. Just
No,
so
no,
special.
Polson is lovely. I had a family who used to own a house on Flathead Lake, so I spent a lot of time up there.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Very cool.
yeah, the first time I ever went whitewater rafting was on that river below that dam. So it's yeah, so it was yeah, it's a lot of fun, a lot of fun. Very and it is quite beautiful. I understand why people gravitate towards up there for sure. It's a little bit desolate and rural for my taste, but if you're into that sort of thing, it is one of the best places to be. Um,
I wanted to tell you because it's the same dam that I went to before that 10-page scene. And
yeah,
since we've both been there, it's actually pretty cool. I spent like an hour just looking at that just powerful water falling. I mean, because
yeah,
and I actually posted about it because it gave me just kind of it settled my nerves. I'm a water sign, so it
yeah.
really as a Cancer, it just kind of gave me the ability to just kind of process everything, and it was right before that 10-page scene. So it's interesting that you
Yeah,
know
no,
that
it's
dam.
it's really cool for whitewater rafting on the Flathead River below the dam because unlike most dams, water comes from the bottom, so it's deadly cold. With
Right.
Flathead Lake Dam, it comes from the top, so the water is warm actually. So it makes for excellent rafting, excellent swimming. It's a lot of fun because the water is not freezing cold. So especially
Right.
in the summer, so it's nice. Yeah, 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 and it's it Polson's a lovely town. So
Yes.
how was dealing with the locals? How did how did they react to y'all's work?
That was actually one of the most gratifying things about the whole process was how in it they all were, and I think a lot of the dissonance that I've found in our country is that people feel like they don't have a voice, and so they unfortunately like moth to a flame, go to social media because it feels like their only voice, But I think it was a very impactful thing to have a film, showcasing their little corner of the world. I think it meant a lot to them. And, Graham and I would be at breakfast and we'd hear people talking about the film while we were shooting it. And I really do. I feel like it became a team effort. And I include the town in that. I really do. The cast and crew became so close, but it was really also just the whole town that got behind us, whether they were donating a meal or, helping us out or, giving us a location or whatever it was. They really found value in it. And even after it screened, in Polson, because that was the first screening that we did. I was buying a couple gifts for my wife, and three different people came up to me and said the exact same thing. They said, it was so impactful to have a film told about our little story, or our little corner of the world. Like it really meant a lot to us in different ways. They were coming up to me and saying the exact same thing, and it kind of resonated with me that maybe this is a reason why we're finding so much dissonance in our society is that people feel like they really don't get showcased, they don't get seen. And I took that to heart, and now with my wife, we have our own production company, Dragon Hunter Productions, and her original name is Hunter, her maiden name, and so Drago and Hunter makes Dragon Hunter Productions. That kind of worked out, and
Clever.
our yeah, and our basically through line of our production company is to do very much in the vein of Fabian Verdugo and Somewhere in Montana and bring stories to little pockets of the country and make their voices and their little shine a spotlight on them, make them feel like they're known too. And we come from a rural little town in Virginia, Front Royal, Virginia. We're both from, and so that is our next big project that we want to do together is tell a Christmas story in our little hometown of Front Royal.
Uh-oh, someone call Hallmark. Someone call Hallmark. No,
Definitely not a
I
Hallmark
didn't.
movie, but
Yeah.
it's a deep Christmas movie. My wife is a writer. She actually won, a best podcast script at Austin Film Festival last year, and she's actually won a couple awards for this script already. Front Royal was originally called Helltown on the map. It's a Confederate, town, and it is definitely, charged in many ways. It's a place that has I always say like a very mystical spirit to it, right? Because it was that town where the North and the South kind of came together to maybe make some good trouble, right? And so
No, no,
it has.
I know that town. I know that town well. I lived very briefly in eastern West Virginia, in a
Oh
little tiny
wow,
town called Shepherdstown. And
yeah,
my
I almost went to
weird,
college there.
yes, weird, yeah, yes, Shepherd University. I was on the adjunct list there for a long time. Weird connection. My girlfriend at the time, her ex lived down there, and there's a casino in a nearby town called Charlestown,
Yep.
and he was looking to get a job. He had worked there. I forget, he had worked there, and he was looking to get a job at the big MGM in Washington D.C., and he needed a lot of help with applications and things like that. So he was kind of moved into our living room for a week while we were helping him get this job, sort of thing. And so he was always driving back between there. And so in the midst of all that, I've spent way too much time in Northern Virginia at this point in my life. Way too much in that part of the world. Too much time. It's more than I ever planned on spending. In that part of the world. So yes, no, that's very good. I always find when it comes to as an artist with local relations, people get very nervous as I write books in addition to doing this.
Nice.
And people get very nervous when, the writer TM has come to town. And I was in this little tiny town called Unadilla, New York. And my great aunt is a working artist. She does textiles and painting and all this type of thing. And so, and I was staying with her for a little while, and so we would just sit in the house all day. And neither her and I care about eating food much, so we were just making art and all this type of thing. And she comes to me and she's kind of like, I feel like we need to have important people in the town for a meeting. And I'm kind of like, okay, why? And she's kind of like, well, everyone's really nervous about you, and I think they'll feel better if they just meet you, sort of thing. And I'm kind of like, okay. So we just like have this like all these different artists who were making wonderful things. And so I literally did like a tour all over town to this person, and coffee here and dinner, all this type of thing. And then everyone felt better and calmed down. And so and this has happened way too many times in my life where to get everybody feels better if they know who you are, and then they trust you, and it just calms everything down. So I that kind of came up in the midst of you talking about the eating breakfast impulse, and it's like, yeah, local relations are very important.
Yes.
So
100%.
I find it
100%.
tedious as hell, but it's very important. So it's yes. So now that we've kind of flogged this film stuff, tell me some of the other stuff you've been in and been up to. Walk us through the history, because I imagine for so many people this will be their first time hearing about you. So what else have you been up to?
Yeah, well, I mean, it started really early with me. I mean, I think I caught the acting bug the second that I, arrived on this planet. And, for me, it started all in local theaters. Virginia didn't have a lot of film and TV when I was growing up. It's starting to, but there was none to be seen when I was growing up. And so, I did. Shout out to Fauquier Community Theater and all the little theaters that I did productions in growing up. I started at 4, just being on stage and played Tom Sawyer and in middle school and did like Billy Bigelow and Carousel and Sky Masterson in high school. And one of my first paying gigs, I was actually doing dinner theater at Riverside Dinner Theater in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I got to play Mowgli in the Jungle Book and Hansel and Gretel and Little Patrick and Mame. And it was at that point, because I think that dinner theater is such a humbling, way to start, is because you're up on stage and you're singing and you're up there and then you're coming back and serving tables, can I refill your Coke or whatever it is, right? And so it was just a really great way for me to understand the work that was going to go into this dream, that it wasn't just about the dream, it was about the effort. And so I tell this story all the time, but it's a great one. I came off stage one night after Little Patrick, and there was this woman in her 70s, and she came up to me and she said, thank you, young man. I realized, just watching your performance tonight that I need to make a bigger effort to be closer to my son. And I was like, oh, wow. And I mean, you have to understand 14, 15 years old, like it made such an impact on me. And I was like, oh, that's why this is important. Like this is the power of art. This is the power of storytelling, is to make people and, be in touch with their positive emotions, their heart, not their head. And it just was a really powerful thing that resonated. And, that just basically sparked the journey to New York City. Both my parents are originally from New York City. So when I went back to New York City and lived with my grandma's boy on 79th and Broadway, it really honestly was just like moving back home. Because for the first time in my life, I was around my people, and I would be around Actors Equity, singing my 16 bars for Phantom of the Opera or Les Mis or what have you. And I booked a national tour through Theater Works, which was a kids show, which actually taught me a lot too. I mean, I think all the time, like
I
performing for
miss children's
children.
theater. I used to,
Oh, it's so great.
there was this theater I used to work at called Heritage Square in Colorado. And we only did two dinner shows, Friday night, Saturday night. We didn't have to serve though. We were lucky. Our theater was tall but not long.
Mm,
So literally had to carry the food up these stairs to get it all the way to the top. So, but the compensation for not having to do that was we would do shows for school groups during the day. So
that was me too.
noon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we would do, one or two a day, usually a morning and
Yep.
an afternoon sort of thing.
Yep. Yep.
Like 11 o'clock at lunch and then like 2, 3 o'clock, whatever have you. And and then on Friday sucked because you would have done two of those and then we had an evening show to do. So then we have dinner break and then do that sort of thing. So Friday was a very full day. Um, and honestly, I just miss that because kids are so gullible. Like they believe everything. Like it's fun.
I will say this. I don't know so much that they're gullible. I think they'll tell you the truth. Like if something's not
Well, that's
working, like
true. That
you
is,
won't
yeah.
you won't get it. There was so much that I learned from being in Junie B. Jones and playing Herb, where some
Yeah.
things, even in like how I thought the character should, have that moment or that maybe wouldn't land, and then I'd try something completely different the next day, and it would. So I
Yeah.
feel like they are the best barometer because they'll tell you how they feel.
Well, no,
And
I mean
I
they are unforgiving critics, but what I did
Yes.
love is walking out, like we would be doing, like Cinderella or Snow White or a Hansel and Gretel or we had a great little thing we did with Three Little Pigs sort of thing. And
Cool.
just like walking out and they're just like wonder on their faces. You don't get that from a dinner theater audience sort of thing. Very rarely do you get that. Adults are not quite so that feeling of wonder because a lot of these kids, it was their first time ever going to see live theater. And I mean,
Mhm.
I got into that place because I was that kid at one time too. That's actually how I got in acting with them. Is I had gone there to see several things. They had a children's program. My very first play there was a stupid show about potato farming in Idaho called Heaven Help the Potators. I played the mayor, and
Yes.
I was 12.
That's
And
awesome.
yes, and it was, and I met one of the actors, Annie Dwyer, and then went on from there to do a lot of stuff with them, and then yeah, and no, but I love you talking about local community theater. I've produced local theater, which I love to
Good.
do.
Good. Thank you.
The last thing I ever did, you'll laugh about this. I did a production of 12 Angry Men. We had mirror casts, one all women cast, one all male cast, doing the same show.
That's great.
The ladies were, what were they, Thursday? We were Friday. We had Friday, Saturday, two shows on Sunday. I think the women were. I think they were in the afternoon. They had the afternoon shows. We had the evening shows, and it was a theater that had been. It was an old gas station that had been
Wow.
converted into a theater. So the
Wow.
stage and the seats were in the car garage, and you went in and had drinks in the old convenience store. And it had been
Cool.
painted black as like a black box thing and all this sort of thing. So it's, and if actually the other one that I was also thinking of in 2020, right before the pandemic, on New Year's. I did a 24-hour theater festival in Shepherdstown at the Black Box Theater there, which
Oh,
is really
I've heard about
great.
that. Yeah, yeah,
Yes, she is amazing. She does great children's theater. She's a lot of fun. And if you're ever, in that area, you should stop on by. And also the old Opera House in downtown Charlestown is
yeah.
wonderful too. And my ex-girlfriend works there a lot, and she loves local. That's honestly how we bonded, is we both loved theater, and she worked in local theater. And like, I think the first time we went on a date, we talked for 2 hours about theater sort of thing. And
Oh, cool.
and that, but she got me to do this 24-hour theater festival, which I was not going to do, and I wrote this really great script, which has actually been recycled several times. They did it that I then, when
Nice.
I was doing my MFA, they were doing a script thing, and someone's like, "Oh, we have a call for scripts." And I said, "Oh, here's a 20-minute thing I wrote for this 24-hour theater festival sort of thing." And then they're kind of like, "We love your script, but there's no one to produce it, but we have actors." And I'm kind of like, "I've been roped in. When's this? Just send me the Zoom link," sort of thing. So no, I mean, I one of the things, and I kind of like to get your opinion on this. This is a total side tangent, but this leads to something. I promise. I find actors who start out in theater are just stronger. I think one of the problems with Hollywood is we have a bad habit in this country of plucking good-looking people off the street who have no talent whatsoever other than being themselves. And one of the reasons why British actors are so good is that they have all this training in theater, and they all have to do Shakespeare and all this sort of thing. And I've always felt strongly that actors who come from theater are just a little bit better because they have all that experience of, like you were talking, those theater shows, those children's shows, national touring, all this sort of thing. I feel like that gives you so much more to draw from.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I agree with you. I think theater is live and it is alive. And so I think, you don't have the guardrails of a cut or an edit. I
Yeah.
understand all of that. That being said, there are challenges about film that, I think are valid as well. I mean, you could be working a scene like I was in somewhere in Montana for 2 years, and then it comes to that day and it's time to give it away. And you have to really just not psych yourself out because you've done all this work. I do a lot of backstories. I consider myself I would say like a method actor, but in the good ways where I do want to make sure that I've done all of the foundation to create a world in which I feel like all I have to do is say the words. And sometimes that comes down to things like I lost 25 pounds for this role, and I felt like I needed to hire a nutritionalist. I hired Evolve Fitness, Jennifer and Nathan DeTracy, who were wonderful and taught me how to do it in a healthy way. And it just got me into the body of the character. So that way, when I came to set, I really felt like I was Fabian because I felt like he forgot to eat meals and he was like very hyper driven and hyper focused. And so those like little things that you do to build the foundation, I do a lot of backstories, really help you. But you're right. I do think that in many ways, I think theater does create a dynamic of not having a safety net in many ways, and the freedom of expression and the freedom of understanding how audiences are reacting to you is a great way to build your craft, because you don't get this in film, right? You don't get an
Yeah.
audience until you've actually shot the thing, and then you're seeing it, but I mean it's already shot at that point, right? So being and I was just actually talking to Michelle Hurd's husband, Garrett Delahunt, who is phenomenal. And we were just at a Spring screening together, and he was on an off Broadway show with some incredible. I mean, the cast is unreal, and we were just talking about it, and it was really really. Cool just to reminisce about, being in the theater again, because a lot of times, like you miss it because of the fact that that's where you were born from. And so it was just really nice to connect with a lot of the actors that I know that have gotten their start in theater. And I do think it builds a very solid foundation, like I said, without a safety net, without guardrails. But then again, I mean, there are a lot of technical skills that I even had to learn when I started film. You do have to make sure that you're really hitting your mark, hitting your shot, that you understand how to find your light, that you know all of the elements that you need to make sure that you are on point, because you might only get so many takes. And especially in indies, I mean, some of these scenes I would maybe get like a handful or less of takes for these really pivotal scenes in the movie. So there's pressure on that too. So I don't want to
No,
completely
that's
just.
why I always struggled with film and television because when it comes to, making sure you're standing on the right spot and everything, I struggle so much. And too many last minute scriptions. I have terrible memorizing things. So a show gives me so long. There's such a long lead up to kind of get it in sort of thing. And film and TV, I mean, film not as bad, but television, they'll change it as you're standing there. Oh, we don't like how that sounds. That sounds awkward. We're changing it. This is kind of like my poor brain cannot keep up. So you're absolutely right. It is a different skill set. It is a different skill set, and
100%.
and also especially if you have a situation where you are, especially even like a conversation where you've got to shoot it twice from different perspectives, sort of
Hmm.
thing, and to kind of do it, give it that same energy, and then loop right back around and do it again, but at that same level of intensity, sort of thing, for a B-roll shot. That's a whole skill set. It is a whole other set of skills that I think is
Like
that
I
is
wouldn't
not an
have it
easy
any
thing.
yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like I love the fact that I was, born into the theater, and that a lot of the people that are my close friends. I mean, I went to, basically theater school in college. I went to Marymount Manhattan College, and that was just wonderful to be in those shows, and to meet a lot of theater people from them, Into the Woods, and a lot of the shows. I did Richard II there as well. But like I think that for me, I'm so proud that I started in the theater, but now that I have branched into TV and film, like I respect the skill set of TV and film actors as well. And yeah, I mean there are people that get their breaks in many different ways. I understand that as well. There's a business side of it, but I'm just always been one to enjoy the journey, and especially right now, just being in that sweet spot of just appreciating the relationships that come along with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we've reached the end, so why don't you tell us where we can keep up with you online and follow you around?
Absolutely. The easiest way is at Matt Drago on Instagram, MattDrago. From there, I've got my link tree up there. It's got all of my different websites, my actor website, mattdrago.com, my production company website, dragonhunterproductions.com. It's also got my IMDb if you want to check out my past and future projects. And then, I just share personal stuff and professional stuff about my career and journey, because they're one and the same for me. And yeah, just give me a follow there, and you'll be in the know for everything that's coming out with Somewhere in Montana, where it will be screening, when it will be on VOD and streaming, and then anything else to follow.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Cameron Journal podcast.
It's been a pleasure, Cameron. Thank you so much.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter, and we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you.